Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you from deep within the Shadowlands, beneath the spiraling tower of the Dark Lord. I'm your host, Conor O'Brien, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Martin O'Dwyer. Hey, Martin.
Tasty intro this week, Conor, I must say. Deep
Oh,
beneath
thank you very
in
much.
the Shadowlands.
I thought, seeing as we're going to be talking a little bit about some bad guys and monsters and stuff, sitting here beneath the spiraling tower of the Dark Lord, it was an appropriate place to set up our podcast recording.
Hell yeah, man, fuck yeah. Orthanc, give me a play, like, fuck it, man, yeah, dream home, Orthanc, like, come on. Like, top floor, Orthanc, the view you had, chef's kiss.
So yeah, how are you doing this week, man?
I'm doing really good. It's actually a really good time probably for us to cover something like this, because I actually just last night DM'd the final, like, arc boss battle for, like, basically the arc I've been putting my guys through since I think like October 2020 till now, is how long we've been running that now, pretty much. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk about it. It went really well. And also WandaVision was super awesome this week, so I'm in a great mood.
I still haven't watched a single episode. I'm going to, like I said, I'm waiting to. I have moved on to. I told you already. I have moved on to Naruto Shippuden. I watched a couple of more episodes. I'm getting there. I'm enjoying it a lot. The animation's way more compelling than a lot of. I saw someone online calling out anime recently of how it's just it's like still shots with voiceover.
Oh, sorry.
And occasionally a character might flinch very slightly to show that they're upset, and I'm like, do you know what? You're not wrong.
It's a lot of the like 90s anime will be like, because to save money for when they're going into a fight scene, the rest of the episode will be like one thing, and the mouth will just go. And then maybe like a rock will float past in one scene, one thing to give an idea of the passage of time.
I noticed this with the end of. I can't remember if we talked about this. We missed last week. So we may have talked about this when we tried to record it last week, and we had technical issues at first, and then I had just the worst goddamn week.
Yeah.
With my house, I basically had on Friday I had a waste pipe leak into my sitting room, and then I tried multiple things to fix that over the weekend, and then I had to on Monday I called the plumber. On Tuesday they came out and they fixed that, and I was like, oh, okay, thank God, that's that done. And then I went out to my back garden and I saw that the drain there had overflowed, and I'm like, oh God. So I opened up the sewer grate, and I could see that there was a point, Martin, in our campaign where we traveled through the sewers in order to get to the Underdark, and you guys literally fell into a cavern of shit.
Yeah.
That's basically what got dislodged from my sewers by the county council there. So that was Wednesday. I called them. On Thursday they came out. They moved some amount of material from the sewers beneath my house, and hopefully, knock on wood, that's all well and done now. But we basically we missed last week's episode. But yeah, actually, it's funny that you mentioned it. We're actually at a unique point, the two of us, because you're just now done an arc you've been on for some time.
Yeah.
And I too, well, rather than the game I'm running with you playing in it, the coming week is likely going to be the culmination of an arc we have been on for about the same amount of time, I think.
Yeah, I was having a nice relaxed Saturday until you reminded me of that, you know. It's probably one of the best times we can really talk about. The only unfortunate thing is, like, we can't really go in depth on the one you're about to bring up. Otherwise, I think I might have a slight advantage.
I would like to talk about it next week. Oh,
this is a definite. This is a definite for sure. Yeah. So expect a follow up to this. Either maybe it's a whole episode, or maybe this is part of an episode next week.
If I was to hint anything, not so much for you, but for the audience, what to keep in mind: Underdark, cursed bat elf people, aberrations, and a city suspended from the ceiling of a cavern.
Yeah, and we're all already hallucinating.
Yes, and you're all hallucinating.
Actually, I haven't yet.
No, you haven't. I did. We won't go too into it, but I did as a setup a few sessions back. When you guys hadn't quite gotten to the city yet, you were kind of getting closer, so the proximity was kind of kicking in and stuff like that. And there was these horrific dreams that are plaguing the city on the surface above. And as you got closer, you had one particular dream. I didn't tell you it was a dream. I woke your party up in the middle of the night, and basically had one of the demon lords, Jubilex, just appear out of a crack in the floor and attack you guys, and do an insane, like, you guys were not ready to fight a demon lord at level 8 or 9 or whatever you were at.
It went very differently to the last time I played a character who fought a demon lord. I killed that demon lord in 3 hits.
Yeah. You're also playing a paladin though,
yes.
as well.
Yeah,
those extra D8s on Smite are lovely. But yeah, you ended up actually getting killed, and as soon as you got, and like, not just killed, but because of the nature of Jubilex, killed and dissolved and consumed. And I did feel a little bit bad about it, because I was like, Martin, you watch as the light disappears from above you as you're swallowed into this thing and dissolved, and I could see the cogs turn in your head going, can't use it for no way, there's no body left, it'll have to be like a true resurrection or something like that. And then I went, and then you wake up and you turned to me and fucked me out of it.
I'm sorry about that, but yeah.
No, do you know, justified, because it was a little bit on the mean side.
It's scary how accurate you got my thought process there, though.
Oh yeah. Oh, I knew it as well, because I'm like, if there's no body, it's going to seem even more gruesome, and the rest of the team only barely made it out there. They even got like seriously hurt. They basically decided halfway through the fight was not worth it, that this thing is way too strong. Let's fucking run for it. And then the 3 of you got through the door and you didn't. Yeah. And I was kind of aiming for you, because I needed you to die to wake up. And then you woke up in a sweat, having had a horrific nightmare. Both in character and in person.
That was tense would be a word I'd probably use for that.
Yeah. That was it was one of my dare I say prouder moments in this campaign. But speaking of demon lords and bosses and beings of incredible power, let's talk about how we kind of set up our bosses, how we plant the seeds of their plans, what they do, how they become, wrapped up with the party, and why the party go into stopping them. Right. So, is there any big bads of your campaign, Martin, that stand out to you as being one you're particularly proud of? Any big bad that you're like, yeah, they were fun to kind of confront and fun to fight and defeat for the party?
So we're talking like not the overall villain, but like a villain that has arisen over the thing.
Correct. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be the overall guy of the campaign. It could absolutely be a villain of a 2 or 3 level arc or something like that as well.
Cool. I've come to mind that I have a lot of fun planning boss battles, because like I'm a big fan of horror, and if there's one thing that horror does better than any genre of film, it's tension. And I think tension is a big part of making a boss battle feel both like meaningful and also like difficult. Like you're like, this could go either way. Like if there's no tension, there's no danger. And probably the vice versa. If there's no danger, there's no tension. So you need to. I feel like when it comes to setting up a boss battle, you want to a boss battle. You want to make them impactful, and you want to make them threatening, and you want to engender a feeling in the players that if they do not intervene in some way to stop whatever's going on here, it's going to have serious consequences. Yeah,
absolutely. I think touching on the element of fear, I think that's the big thing. I mean, there's times in your campaign where I think players are going to want to fight a horde of 12 goblins.
Yeah.
But be cleaving through them like it's no tomorrow. I'd feel like badasses, and it's totally that's a big part of D&D, is feeling like the hero that you're playing.
Yeah.
But the boss needs to be different than that.
Totally.
It's less satisfying when you've been hearing about this Dark Lord for level after level, and when you finally confront them, you knock them out in 2 rounds, and it's like, all right, I guess that's done. There needs to be an elevated sense of danger for the life of your character.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. It can be. It's mostly about, this might be something that's a genuine, real threat, and it might mean I don't get to play this character anymore if I don't play my cards right.
It's either I think it's like it's a real like physical threat to you as a character, but as well, particularly if it's like somewhere, say like if it's a villain has shown up like in your home country or like in a particular city or area that the party have been operating out for a while and they've grown like attached to. There's not only just like the physical threat of fuck up. If I fuck this up and we fail, like I might survive, but everything I've grown accustomed to could be destroyed and taken away. And that's like it's like a physical and I suppose like an almost existential threat that they can pose if you do it well. If I may go on a slight tangent, I'd like to talk about the one because I ran that boss fight last night, and it was very much a big kind of everything coming together end of the series boss fight. So like I said, we started this arc around. I remember I started in October because we finished the thing and we were just moving into this new arc, and I noticed it was October and I was like, I literally messaged my party and was like, guys, it's October. Do you want to do like a horror arc? And they were like, yes, absolutely, let's do it. So nice. I was like, perfect. And at the same time, I was I changed around my group and I was introducing 2 new players. One of them was a blood hunter and one of them is my my wildfire spirit druid. And so when they were all coming in, I was coming up with different ways. I had a few ideas of different ways to introduce them, and then I was kind of chatting to the guys to work out elements of their backstory. And I asked my blood hunter Thurston, like, where do you see yourself being from? And he was like, right, they're heading to Darkfell now. So how about I'm from Darkfell? And I was like, okay, how about this? So like he's part of an order that I got, an order of monster slayers, that I call the Kin, and the way I had my idea for them is they're quite like almost like Green Lantern style. They're like, you basically graduate your class and then you're sent out and you have a region that you were sent out to, and as more classes go out, more regions go out depending on where there's more need basically, and then like they're sent there and they have intermediaries then that travel around between villages, and villages can seek them out and they will arrange the contract, and then the Kin member comes on to close the contract out. So he was coming into that, and I was like, oh, perfect. So yeah, you're coming back from a mission in this city called Leafhold on Darkfell, where you were dealing with a lycanthrope threat. You're moving to the main city to cash in on your contract, and basically get the gold for the contract for the work you've just done. So the party all arrived at the city at the same time. Half the party took an airship there, and our wildfire druid Mandry, he took an airship from another continent, and then Thurston was already there, so they're all waiting in the line. The line then got attacked by lycanthropes. Lycanthropes came over the hills and attacked the people basically coming off the transports going into the city, and that was like the first thing as a new party together. Their first kind of thing was lycanthropes.
Oh, so you had them both coming off of 2 transports, and then a fight broke out, and of course, even though they're not yet allied, they have to jump into action together and stuff. Yeah, I like that. That's a good action. That's a really good way of naturally bringing the party together. They fight alongside one another. They kind of stick together afterwards, and it makes sense. Yeah,
it was fun too with the idea of the line, because like, Joe, it's like a medieval fantasy is kind of what I'm going for. Like, I really like the kind of classic, like very like I don't want not swords and sandals, but like you're like your classic like Tolkien-esque kind of era.
Exactly. Tolkien-esque, I think, is probably the most whatever era Tolkien-esque is where it's kind of high medieval almost. It's kind of like that you're going for. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for context, so the lycanthropes that are attacking the city Darkfell, they are actually part of an opposing order to the blood hunter order that my player is a part of. His order is called the Kin, and these lycanthropes are coming from an order called the Brood, and they're led by basically the disgraced apprentice of the founder of the Kin. So a long time ago, there's a schism in the Kin. The apprentice of the founder leaves and sets up his own order with blackjack and hookers, and so then he's trying to basically cut off supplies from the city. So he's attacking people, sending lycanthropes in to attack people as they get off the boats. And with the line, it was cool because I had 2 of the players near the front, 1 player in the middle, and 1 player far back. So when the lycanthropes attacked, they had like 3 separate fights that went on, and then as enemies started falling, they started naturally grouping to deal with the other fights. So they very naturally arranged themselves in a fighting party and kind of naturally got to see what everyone does. And it was there was a great moment because it was the first time Mandroy, he's the wildfire spirit, so he summons his wildfire spirit. And unlike every other elemental in the game, I think I've said this before, but the wildfire spirit does not have the immutable form feature, so you can polymorph your wildfire spirit. So he just sent out this lovely like orange fire like tabby cat out in front of all these lycanthropes. I think it was a werebear, a wereboar, and a werebat. And then he went, I'm going to turn that into a giant ape. And that ape punched the lycanthropes to pieces. So they deal with that fight and they come in. They all kind of regroup, but they're all brought in as a group together because they have to get checked over for bites and infections, because the city is very aware of these things. So clerics check them over. They start talking it over. And they're all brought to speak to this one administrator. And he basically lays it all out and kind of gives them the lowdown on what's been happening for the last month or so. Lycanthropes attacks are becoming more common and more frequent, and they're beginning to lose the ability to protect the settlements outside the city, so they have to fall back to the city. And not only have people being killed, but quite a lot of people have started to be abducted by these lycanthropes as well. So like they'll go in, turned. Yeah, essentially. They kind of start going on. They go on one mission basically where they accompany their new party members, the kin member, to deal with these lycanthropes that have abducted people at a farm. They went there. That's where I used scarecrows against them for more fun horror stuff. That was really fun. Cool. I used scarecrows and a banshee actually. The scarecrows set up the banshee fight. And then they come back from that and basically they do a couple of missions where they just get more and more involved in just protecting the city from the lycanthropes and kind of discovering the grander threat. And eventually they do become aware of the fact that these aren't random. The lycanthropes are part of a rival group that look to basically cede lycan supremacy across this particular continent. It all kind of comes to a head then at one point where the leader of the brood finds out that the party are tracking them down and doing missions because I have a magic item. It's called a blood quill, which is invented specifically for this arc, where it's basically like a metallic quill that's a scarlet red, and there's one that stands free as a quill, and you set up another one like that down on a piece of paper, and you fill the writing quill with just the blood of a creature, and you can write a one-page letter in blood and send it to anyone on your plane of existence, as long as they have the corresponding quill, and the quill then spits it out like a printer.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they found one of those after they killed a bunch of lycanthropes that were kind of marauding around and raiding houses, and they found their camp. They saved some hostages, they killed the lycanthropes, but they found this quill set up, and one of my players just couldn't resist, picked up the quill, still had some blood in it, and he wrote on the thing. Thought nothing of it, pretended to be the other guy, said, all's good here, boss. But the problem is, because the quill it's basically like a carbon copy of whatever you write gets spit out exactly as it's written. So your man had been getting letters from his subordinate the entire time. And yeah, you can pretend to be someone else in a letter, but not when your exact handwriting is shown.
I was going to say your handwriting would be different, yeah, so he would recognize.
So he became aware. He then set up a trap where he leaked info that there was going to be a rallying point for essentially like a raid about 2 days trip outside the city to the east. So the city's elders, city's council asks the party, will you go and investigate this and report on their numbers? They should be gathering there. We don't want you to fight, we just want you to scout. So they go there, they go down, and they find this gully that's way down, and like it's kind of like there's basically like a gully. It's like, so there's 2 pieces of land here, and it sinks down and then spirals around and goes down about 50 or 60 feet down to like almost like a mini gorge basically, with a cave in its side. And they go down there, and all they find down there is a dead frost giant and the bones of a dead frost giant. And that's when they realize that's when suddenly the ambush is sprung. It's a frost giant zombie and a frost giant skeleton. That's your man knew, and he had a letter in the cave basically going, enjoy your gift. I know what you're up to.
Okay, very good.
They managed to survive that then. They come back and report, and by the time they've come back to report, the Brood's army is now assembled and is ready to besiege the city. Follows a siege of the city with giant skeletons, thousands of lycanthropes, siege weaponry, the whole shebang, magical barriers, everything. So they survive the siege. The players are the heroes of the siege, and that's when the city decides we need to put an end to this threat right now. So we're going to send the general and 50 of our best soldiers with the 4E, and you're going to go and track this guy down. But their guy's fortress was in this like wasteland area of the country they're in, called the Lowlands, and it's the place where the final battle of the gods had happened, and it had been just shattered both like physically and spiritually. So all of these portals to different planes of existence just tend to randomly open, and if they stay open for a while, they begin to influence the area. So my players are journeying through this. It's a 5-day journey. I worked it out. They can travel about 20 miles a day, so it's about 100 miles to this fortress that the enemy army is now retreating to after having lost the siege.
Right.
So they go there. I'm sorry, it takes a lot of build up to get there, but they.
Okay.
I'm trying to like.
I do have questions as
yeah,
well.
I'm trying to streamline it. I promise.
Okay.
So they go through their first. They get to their area, and it's also an area of unraveling magic from Tasha's. So if you cast a spell above first level, you roll a d20, or there's a cast spell, activate a magic item. There's a bunch of things you can do, but you roll a d20, and then it has a random effect. And some of them are real bad. Like one of them deactivates all magic items in the area for 24 hours. And like
that's pretty serious.
Yeah. So like thankfully my players did not roll that badly on it. Like, but like they got lucky. But so the first area they go through is all like this twisted, cracked, very desert, mountain-esque kind of area that's got all these rocky formations, and that area is heavily influenced by the earth plane. So it's got these crazy spires that come up, and they're like ringed with all these precious rare metals, but no one has ever come to harvest them because it's so inhospitable in the area, and all these strange creatures from other planes exist in this area that wouldn't normally, because of its link to the material has been broken. So they go through that area. They go about a day through that area. They encounter these like giant, like essentially they're like stone gorillas that like stack these giant stone blocks. They're completely harmless, but there's just these like wandering giants that wander through the area and just make these stone formations, almost like Stonehenge like stuff. And so they ran into those a few times. The next area they go into. Cool. It was just
that's a really, I like that's not a combat thing. They're not gonna, these gorillas aren't going to attack them on sight.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, they just live in the area, and for reasons we don't know, they just stack stones.
Yeah, if you've seen the cover of the Shadow of the Colossus game, that's what inspired them.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So the next area they go through then is influenced by the fire plane. So they've about a 2-day trek through there. Oh, and while they're actually in the earth plane, they get caught in a flay wind, which is this magical storm that will like really just ruin your day unless you find a way out of it. They go into the fire plane, going, oh, thank God we got out of the flay wind. About a day into the fire plane, they get caught in a firestorm where it literally like rains fire on them for like, I think the firestorm is minutes, but the flay wind is hours. So the firestorm is like 2d4 fire damage every turn you start your turn in the flay wind. No save, it just happens. And there were some close calls with that. My rogue got caught out in it for a round or two, and he felt it. But eventually they make their way through that after an encounter where the druid seems to have been chosen by fire. This pillar of flame just appeared and engulfed him. And out of that pillar came this like flaming Japanese-style dragon that wrapped around him like a constrictor snake, and then just breathed fire on him. And he like had these visions of all these like different lives of ages past, and then he was just left with the one phrase in his head, just chosen, and then all the fire disappears and flies away, and he just like floats back down to the ground.
Cool.
And then they went into another plane that was influenced by Maladomini, which we've talked before, and it was like influenced by this area of hell that's all like slag heaps and ruined fortresses. And they go there, they find this ruined throne room, they find a tomb tapper in there, and the tomb tapper has tunneled from there. Basically, they don't know it, but the tomb tapper has tunneled all the way from underneath the villain's fortress to this throne room because it senses out treasure and gold. So my logic for it was it sensed the treasure in the tower, couldn't get in because it's too well guarded, retreated and went for the next source, which was under this keep, which is how it encounters the players. So my players then have this perfect tunnel that leads them right in under the walls of the keep, which is where the boss fight starts. So they get up there, the tunnel lets them out in like they're essentially like underneath the ruins of this hovel that's inside the walls. It's actually quite built like we mentioned Orthanc and Isengard. It's actually quite like Isengard, where it has this one large mage tower in the middle, and then there's like the ruins of buildings that surround it and a big circular wall. So they come up and they work out with the army. So the army's going to go first. They're going to split into 2 squads and go on either side, east and west on the wall, take out the guys on the wall first, and then sweep back around and take out patrols, so that the party have the straight shot to run right up to the tower, get in there, and then when they get in, the army's going to regroup at the tower and hold the tower, so none of the lycanthrope army can get in and interfere.
Very cool.
Players are like, let's go. All goes off without a hitch. They run out, they start taking out the sentries. My players make it to the stairs. They find the doors are unlocked. because the boss knows they're coming. They go up through. There's it has 5 floors. The first floor is there's the entrance hall, and then the first floor was actually give me 1 sec. I will put it up because I had quite a detailed thing. But it's basically there are 2 puzzle floors, a trap floor, the boss room, and then there's a study above the boss room.
There's something other things I'm kind of noticing, and you bring up some points that I was going to bring up about how to seed your boss, how to set up what the bad or the villain of an arc. A question with that first encounter when the lycanthropes attacked the ships, was the big bad present at that time?
Nope. Probably a good thing to point out. So the first time, this is the first time they ever physically met him, was he stood out when the siege happened. He walked out in front of his army. He had a white hood with a white cloak and completely pristine white plate armor, and so the kin, how they signify their monster hunter, sort of like how the Witchers have their like wolf symbol. The kin have a medallion in their bracer here, actually inspired by the fact that they do. But it's basically about the same size. It's a silver coin, and embossed on the coin is a wolf's head with its mouth open, and there's a sword being driven down through its top jaw to close its bottom jaw.
Yeah.
And that's their symbol. The brood symbol is an inverse, so it's golden, and it's a wolf head with its mouth open, and it's biting off a human hand.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the first time they saw him, and he had that. So they met him first there, but he had been appearing in dreams afterwards to the Blood Hunter, trying to win him over to his side. Tell him, you could be so much more if you were to join me. Give up on your friends; they think you're a monster. Like, I know what you are. I know what you can be. I could teach. I've been, and I think he's like, I think I said he was like 1,500 years old. So he's like, I've been around so much longer. I can teach you so much if you were to just join my side. And I kind of kept that up as a running theme, where I would every so often reintroduce a dream with him, where he would try and tempt him to the side. And of course, my player being a hero was like, "Oh no, I'm just going to cut your head off when I find you."
That's really good though, because like one thing, I think I've done well in some regards, and in other times I've not done so great, is setting up the big bad and kind of, because if you play an entire arc of however many levels, never really encountering or having any direct contact with the big bad, you only maybe seeing their minions or kind of indirectly seeing the effects of what they do. It's not as satisfying when you then get to actually fight them. You want a situation where there's emotional weight behind it. I feel like with movies, we'll often, you can watch Star Wars, just take Empire Strikes Back for example, or whatever, or actually Return of the Jedi. You can watch Return of the Jedi, right? And regularly it will cut to scenes of Darth Vader and the Emperor talking, and you hear them talking about their evil plans, like we'll turn Skywalker to our side and we'll corrupt him and blah blah. And we, as a result, we the audience have a relationship with Vader and with the Emperor, but Luke doesn't. And really, as players in D&D, you're Luke. Luke was the entirety. Jedi's probably a bad example because I'm sure people will correct me on this. Luke actually lets himself get captured at one point in order to be able to talk extensively with his father. But there's a lot of times where you don't get that. Like Luke in Empire, we see Luke doesn't meet Vader till the very end, but we know that Vader is pursuing him and pursuing Solo and Leia. And we the audience then therefore have a relationship. So when Luke and Vader finally meet, we're like, oh man, it's on.
Yeah.
But really, if you're a player playing a D&D campaign and you're Luke, that's your first time meeting Darth Vader, you don't have that emotional weight. So it's not a luxury that we as D&D players have, where we can cut away to the bad guys and show that emotional, and builds that emotional side, that connection that therefore pays off when you finally get to face the bad guy.
Absolutely.
And it's like I said, it's you've kind of done a good job there between having them communicate via the blood quill, and having them have dreams. Dreams are a great way to kind of connect them without having to have them in the same room, because putting a bad guy and a good guy or your party in the same room is a risk, because you might because there's a good chance that the party might be like, why don't we just fucking kill them right now? Let's just get rid of them, and then that's done, which is fine, and it's D&D, so you're totally allowed to do that. But it's not always as satisfying if you decide to, I don't know, just outright murder the bad guy. Like Sometimes bad guys want to cut deals with you. Sometimes you don't know they're the bad guy, but you maybe are a little suspicious of them. And you're gambling a lot with that. But I think having had multiple encounters with them is a great way. Not even fights. It can be a fight, and fights are great. And especially if the bad guy loses this fight or is close to losing, so then they teleport away or they escape somehow. Be prepared to have it be okay if the big bad dies in one of these fights. You need to be ready for that.
Yeah.
But also have them have an escape plan. And that escape plan might be foiled, in which case, kudos to the players if they manage to do that. But I think you got to be a little less precious with the baddies, and you got to be a little willing to have them have a quick run in with the players, and then now run away, and then do that a few times, build a relationship, build a rapport, however good or bad that rapport is, and then that makes for a much more exciting thing. I feel like with campaign 1, the overall bad guy was the Clockwork Man that I ran. Early on, I felt like you had a couple of encounters with him, and I thought that was okay. But then, literally, I think at level 5 or 6,
we nearly got him.
What? Yeah, you very nearly got him. I think he managed to escape. But then you didn't see him again until like level 18.
Yeah.
And I hinted at stuff here and there, and I planned on making a lot of the other smaller arcs in the world as a direct result of him pulling the strings in the background. But I never fully fleshed it out. And it actually just ended up that she went for a solid, I don't know, L12 or 13 levels without having seen him, and then he showed up as the big overall bad guy.
Yeah,
and I feel like I didn't do my job there.
I don't know, like from a player's, but like I think this is where kind of with the DA as a DM you can kind of get a bit paranoid, because from a player's, but like I played that game, and like I can tell you for real, like the entire time we were playing, like we might have had some slightly other focuses, like main focuses at the time, but like the entire time we were when we were fighting, when we were trying to find the Blue Dragonborn with Shamash, right? That entire time. So like that was a decent long arc, real good story. We got really invested in it, and like that was my main concern at the time. But the entire time there were hints and stuff going on. Like even back when after he disappeared, I think the first immediate thing that came after that was when we started doing like my backstory arc, and we had those fights with Garroth. And I remember the final fight with Garroth, you were like, there's a metallic bird with a green glowing eye watching you from a rock, and I didn't get it at the time, but then like I think like we cut to like a couple months later, we're playing a session, and suddenly the group's castle is attacked by a flock of mechanical crows with green eyes, and I'm like, oh my god, it was the fucking Clockwork Man all along. And like that like I would just say like from as someone who played through that, like we didn't see him for a long time, but like he was definitely a concern, because I think the last thing he did before he disappeared was he flew his transplanar airship over one of the main cities we'd been in, and essentially blew up the middle of the city, Independence Day style. Yeah, so like that leaves an impression.
Bomb on the Colosseum.
That leaves a pretty. Was it not like a giant energy beam?
It was like an energy bomb thing he dropped into the Colosseum, which was essentially the center of town, and then that plus a couple extra blocks around it got destroyed. Yeah,
in my head it was Independence Day. But like when that's the note he leaves on, like the character doesn't leave your mind really, like, you know.
I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it, and I think towards the end things ramped up nicely, but it went from like when you first encountered, the first time you had any sort of connection with him was actually like right from the start. I knew I wanted him to be the big bad. So the third mission, you did like two kind of throwaway missions, one with some crabs and some zombies, and one with some drow pirates. And they were just to kind of introduce you to the world and the game. And then the third mission you did was that you had to travel deep into the desert to these ruins and a mine, and then you had to get a gem from I said it was a beholder. It was actually a spectator.
No, you told us it was a spectator after, I think. But we all shat ourselves when we thought it was a beholder. Yeah, because all of us have been watching like Critical Role and stuff. So you're like, it has one big eye and all these eye stalks. I was like, oh, we're all gonna die.
Well, because you were like level 3, maybe.
At the most, I'd say. Yeah. I think we maybe just gotten our subclasses each. Yeah.
Yeah, but he that beholder was put in there essentially to guard this gem called, which I called the Everstone at the time. It was basically a gem of eternal life, but you guys didn't know that, and you ended up taking it, bringing it back to the guy who hired you, who was just the guy who gave you all the jobs in town. Turns out he was hired through another guy who was hired through another guy, and it was all to cover the tracks of the Clockwork Man, who was a mechanical being. He had a mechanical body. He was once human, but he couldn't go after it himself because the tunnels were infested with rust monsters. So he risked his own life, and any of his mechanical servants couldn't go after it either. So he's like, I'll have to hire some throwaways to send and get it for me. And you got that. And my plan early on was to tie in that you guys were directly responsible for him getting his immortal body, his immortal life. And then the quest kind of became Thanos and the search for the Infinity Stones, because I decided after the fact that, oh, it's a stone of eternal life. It's like the Constitution stone, and then there's probably a strength stone, intelligence, and charisma. And I basically made it that there were six what did I call them? Oh, the shards of arrows. They were like pieces of a god's heart. But yeah, like I feel like at the start it was going really well, and then I just kind of got wrapped up in the other stories between the Underdark Drow City and then your story with the demons and everything. And I just honestly completely spaced on adding him in or keeping him present, you know? Occasionally I did little things like the crow and stuff like that, but I don't feel like I did that as well as I could have. Whereas this campaign, I feel like I did a little bit better with Maka, who was the Bear Queen and kind of the personal villain of your arc. Because, well, for starters, we had a one-on-one session. Each player had a one-on-one session with the DM when we started, and I sat down with you, and we played out this aftermath of the battle where you fought her or tried to kill her, and she tied you to a rock and cut out your eye. So there was, it wasn't that I told you on a piece of paper or Google Docs that this happened. Because we played it out, you as a player lived it, which I felt like had more weight because you've actually met her before.
Totally.
And then I felt like, because she's kind of the difference of her and the Clockwork Man is that he was very secretive. She's a public figure, so lots of people could constantly be telling you, "Oh, Maka, the Bear Queen, she's doing this and she's doing that," and you constantly got to hear about her. And then there was that one time where you were in a castle,
dude,
and she arrived unexpectedly, and you had to like sneak out through a secret passage. But when you looked back in through a grate in the floor, you could see her, and you got to watch her behave and how she was and stuff. And then I feel like I got a few more times to like show you who she is and what she is, and then when you eventually got to fight her one-on-one, you called her out, and fought her one-on-one, and luckily came out on top, because that could have gone very differently.
I think I'm very grateful for having a spear of lycanthrope slaying for that fight. Which you personally quested for that, I did. Because you knew what she was and you knew that you'd need this to defeat her. You flat out would not have beaten her if you didn't have that. Oh no, even with that spear, it was close. I got real lucky in that, like I kind of cheesed it a tad bit. If you're familiar with that term from video gaming, when you cheese a boss fight.
Where like you kind of do the same tactic over and over.
You like try, like you're like, it's like you're exploiting the rules of the game to get an advantage almost. So like I have the spear mastery feat. So with spear mastery, you can use your bonus action to set your spear for a charge, and if a creature comes with it, you pick a creature in 20 feet, set your spear for a charge. If they come with a melee range, you make a reactionary attack. If that hits, it does double weapon damage. So knowing that it was a one-on-one fight, my first turn where I raged and just attacked her, and then I went, cool, I'm probably gonna do, because I only had one attack at a time, I was like, I'm gonna do more damage with my bonus action than my action. So I like used my action to disengage, moved back 15 feet, bonus action, set my spear for it.
You had 2 attacks at that point.
Was it? Oh yeah, definitely. Sorry, yeah, but still, double weapon damage is double weapon damage. So totally. I knew she had to run at me because it was a one-on-one fight. She had to, like, there was not going to be like, and she was a melee combatant as well, so she has to get up in my grill to do this. So I was like, okay, cool, set spear for a charge each time, and it was, I think I crit her on one of those as well, And
I'm almost certain you did.
Yeah, and I think it was like the crit with the double weapon damage, with the extra dice for it being a Spirit of Lycanthrope slaying. Oh, like I used that to my effect to try and do it, and even with that was so close. I think she nearly ate me at one point.
Yeah, it was like you talking about using the same move to try and and like there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think, though. I mean, like you played, like, I think here's the thing: if you kept doing that and I saw you kept doing the charge thing, if me, the DM controlling that character, had a way to circumvent that, I would have totally done it as well. I would have taken advantage of whatever things I had, but she didn't. She was very much a melee combatant. She had to come at you up close. You talking about it reminds me of playing Tekken 3 with my sister when I was younger, and what we do is there was a time when we were playing and she discovered that you can do this capoeira spin kick.
Eddie Gordo.
And I would try to run at her, and she would hit it and just do a spin kick and knock me onto the ground, and then she'd back up, and I'd go near her, and she'd do it again and knock me down. And I was like, "Would you stop doing? You can't keep doing the same moves." And she's like, "Yes, I can." Watch me.
Right, detour from the boss thing. In fighting games, there's always one of those. In Tekken, it's Eddie Gordo. In Soul Calibur, it's I think it's Keelik. It's the guy with the bow staff, because all of his attacks, you can do a big heavy, just as a big poke, and he covers half the screen. So you can just keep fucking poking people all the time. And fuck, I haven't played enough MK to. It's been too long since that. But there's always fucking one of those, and I just
probably Scorpion, to be fair.
No, Scorpion is Bay. Shut up.
My friend Keith is a really, really good. He's a really big fan of all the Mortal Kombat games, and he's insanely good. Like, he plays them like online, you should see, like, if you don't even watch the game, don't even watch him play. Watch his fucking hands, man. His fingers move at speed, and he does these button combos, and like he has it all like choreographed to the point where he's like, I know that if I do this move, like punch, and if I do this move, that pushes them back, and then I need to do this move because that will like sweep their feet from a distance and knock them down, and in the time it takes them to get back up, I can do the kunai rope dart thing and go, come over here, get over here.
Good, you got it right the second time.
I don't play the MK games.
Did you see the trailer came out yesterday?
I watched bits of it.
Oh, it's class.
But he pulls them in, and then he knows when he pulls them in that they're stunned for just long enough that he can do this combo. And I've seen him play games online, multiple games in a row, and I've seen him, and he'll perfect game people, like, because he knows he only plays Scorpion, and he absolutely wrecks people with it.
That's how most shit is in the FGC, though. Like, I watch a decent amount, not like super regular, but like I'll watch Evo, which is just like, it's basically like, if I'm probably going to get around with it. So it's basically almost like the World Championships for various fighting games, and it'll be a big like multiple day thing in Las Vegas, where they set up multiple convention rooms. It'll be like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Smash Bros, Tekken, everything, like, and they'll just go nuts, and they'll stream it. And it's actually really hype, even if you are not someone who likes fighting games. It's like watching it's like, because I watch like stuff like MMA and stuff. I get a super similar feeling from watching like a really good match of like Street Fighter or MK as I do from watching like a UFC main event. It's crazy. It shouldn't be, but I do. It's crazy. I love it. But
I don't get too much of a kick off those games. I'm not a big fan of those kind of one-on-one fighting games. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said. I mean, it's like, if you watch people who are just really good do pretty much anything, it can be seriously entertaining.
I love
like
that.
The activity itself may not be compelling to you, but seeing someone who's just very, very good at it, like think about those people who make the ice cream on the cold surface thing when they use the kind of scraper to chop it up and stuff. I mean, like, making ice cream isn't necessarily the most exciting thing, but when you watch them chopping it all up and scooping it really like in a really stylish way and putting it onto a cone, you're like, that's really impressive to watch. So,
do you remember when this was about boss battles?
Oh, vaguely, yeah, we should go back to
that. But yeah, anyway, look, that's, I suppose, to finish off, that's like the context needed. But basically, my guys made their way through the tower. There were 2 trap floors and a puzzle floor. They made their way through. I was so sickened. There's a puzzle I took straight from the book. It's called 4x4, where basically there's 9 skulls and you have to arrange them in a row on almost like a Sudoku grid, right? And it's easy enough puzzle. There's like numbers on both sides. You basically have to match the numbers going down to the numbers going across for how many skulls should be in each row. Kind of easy enough to figure out, but it would take a few minutes. I forgot I have a blood hunter. He just picked up one of the skulls and did grim psychometry and saw the answer. And I couldn't do anything about it. I was like, okay, roll your check. He's like, 23. I was like, God fuck yeah. You see someone place the skulls in this order, and I just sent him a screenshot of the answer key.
We also have a blood hunter in our game, and I feel like Grimm's psychonometry is just vague enough to be broken as hell.
It's good fun though. It's really good fun.
I kind of rule it. Like it's honestly, it keeps me on my toes, but I also feel like it's good for my improv skills. Whenever Gavin is like, I'm gonna do Grimm's psychonometry here, and I'm like, okay, I had nothing planned for this, so let's see what comes out of my brain right now.
See, because I see that happen to you, I know plan for it in my game.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that like blood hunters are now int based, so they have very high history scores and stuff like that. So Gavin typically rolls usually above an 18, or actually no, usually about 20. So I usually end up having to describe in a stylized way something about the area, but like it usually has to be something negative or something dark.
Yeah, it's usually like to do with the troubled history of an item, object, or place.
Yeah.
But I'll give a brief rundown of just how the boss battle goes, right? So they made their way through the trap floors in the puzzle floor. They arrive in the throne room, and when they arrive in the boss Ludwig, he's like I believe he's a wood elf. He's about 1500 years old. Wears like immaculate white plate, completely white plate armor, and he carries this very fancy looking longsword that I based off of Dawn, the sword of Arthur Dane from Game of Thrones. It's made out of a meteor. So it's a sword I call the Clip's Edge, and it's basically, it was forged by clerics of the moon god Gelarch, and from steel from iron from a comet that fell during a lunar eclipse, and it's like an extra. It's a +1 weapon. It does an extra like 2d6 radiant damage on hit, and that's what he was using. So he hit very, very hard, very, very hard. And they only have one tank really. They have the blood hunter, and then the swashbuckler rogue can kind of hang there as well, but he doesn't have the greatest hit points. So it goes in, and this is also my party's first encounter with a creature that has legendary actions and layer actions. Yeah. So it was Ludwig. It was his queen, who I called the Queen of Blood, who was just a straight up blood witch from I believe that's Rakdos is the blood witch. And then
from Ravnica, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica.
They're really cool. I would recommend giving them a look if you're looking for like a blood based villain. They're only like CR7 too, so they can be good for like lower levels. But I had him, he was a CR10, Ludwig. She was a CR7, and then I had two just regular wolves in there that were like his pets. And they were just really there to soak a few hits and kind of prolong the fight a little bit. But the other two were serious threats. So at the start, immediately they were rushing. Things are kind of going okay at the start, but one thing I hadn't realised in my own planning is that the way I designed the room, it was small enough that a lot of my players' bigger AoE spells, that the really heavily damaging ones like Fireball and Vitriolic Sphere, they couldn't use them without hitting their allies. So I had accidentally made it harder than I realised, and I didn't realise this until I was talking to them afterwards. So it starts going decently enough at first, but things start getting a little dire once the legendary actions start coming, and particularly once Ludwig, the boss, hybrid forms. So he's also a Lycan. So he hybrid forms, he starts hitting people, but he also he's a higher level blood hunter, so he can use the Rite of the Roar, which is thunder damage on your melee weapon.
Is there like a fear effect that goes along with that as well?
That was one of I don't know if there's one of that, but I had a fear effect in his legendary actions. So for his legendary actions, I had give him 3. There was multi attack. I gave him something that I called predatory leap, which was he could leap to an unoccupied space within 20 feet, and it doesn't provoke any opportunity attacks. And then the last one I had, I believe, was Howl of the Pack Leader, which is very similar to a dragon's frightening presence. He basically howls. Any creature that can hear him, any creature that he chooses that can hear him within 60 feet has to make a DC 16 Wisdom save, or they're frightened for 1 minute. They repeat save and throw at the end of their turn. If they pass the save, they're immune for 24 hours. Half my party failed it on the first go, including the Blood Hunter and my Rogue. So 2 of the biggest heavy hitter melee types couldn't approach. So that started things on a dangerous path. Then he started engaging them. my rogue broke off because he couldn't approach the Ludwig. He went after the Blood Witch. They had a bit of a tangle for a while. Some really clutch spells from my party. My Druid Mandroy, he cast Heat Metal on Ludwig's breastplate, Ludwig's plate armor. So that takes 10 minutes to take off and put on. So he couldn't take it off. So for the entire fight, he had disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls because of Heat Metal, because he couldn't drop the armor.
That's a seriously underrated spell, Heat Metal.
Yeah. That was also followed up by they used the silver smoke bombs that I talked about in the previous episode on the Lycanthrope, and they used it when he was fighting my Bloodhunter, and my Bloodhunter had attuned the Necklace of Adaptation, which allows him to breathe in that
before as well, yeah.
So he attuned that, so he was fine. So your man failed the save, so he was poisoned for an hour, so he disadvantaged on all his ability checks anyway. And so it looked good for them, but then things started to turn when he started hitting them a lot, and like, because I was rolling, it was a D8 plus 7 slashing damage plus 3d6 combination of Radiant and Thunder, and no one in my party had resistance to any of those damage types. So it went actually the Bloodhunter had resistance to slashing, but that was it. He couldn't have any of the other damage, and that was way more. So after a while, I brought nearly everyone as low as they've ever been. I half health did the Bloodhunter by the end of the fight, which was the lowest he had ever been, because he's just a tank. He is like full of plate, and he can hybrid form, and he's resistance. But he almost got to the point where he wolfed out and would go for the nearest person. I nearly killed the Wildfire Spirit straight out in one turn with my boss. I nearly KO'd my Druid. I nearly KO'd my Sorcerer. I also, but for some lucky rolls, my Rogue would have gone down as well. And there was a real clutch mass healing word from my Druid right at the end of the death throes of the fight, where it started to look at its grimmest. He literally he had 7 hit points, and he dragged his ass across the middle of the floor and cast mass healing word, give everyone 18 hit points back, and suddenly boom, the morale was back. They were ready to go, and then things started on the turn, and it was just it was really great as well, because the my Bloodhunter had failed to save on the Howl, so he had been feared the entire fight. Literally the entire fight he had been feared, and he was trying everything he could. He had Drow poison, so he put Drow poison on arrows and tried to fire them at your man, and he had disadvantage on the shots because he was afraid, and his dex isn't as good as his strength, so he missed everything. Even when he did get in melee with him, the disadvantage, he was missing him every time. And I swear, before he made the save on the second last round of combat. The third last round of combat, he rolled a 14 on a DC 16 save, and he had been going it was 3, 6, 12, 8, 14, and we're all like, no, come on, you're so close, because he had I think he didn't have much to add to his wisdom. Second last round, end of his turn, breaks the fear. He's right. The boss had charged between him and another. The boss had put himself in flanking because he was low enough health that he'd essentially gone feral because of the lichen thing.
Yeah, of course.
And because there were 2 people here and 1 person here, he went for where he could do the most damage and just ran between the Rogue and the Bloodhunter and started slashing. So as soon as the Bloodhunter came out of the fear, turn came around, the lichen missed a whole round of it. The boss missed a whole round of attacks because of Heat Metal. The Rogue hit him twice and brought him to 5 HP, comes around to the Bloodhunter's turn, and I'm like, and the fear just dropped. He only has to hit him and he'll kill him. Yes. And fucking, 2 hits, long sword of sharpness and moon touch sword, both with lightning on them, and he stabbed him in the stomach, brought him down to his knees, and then looked him in the face and said, remember what I told you last time we spoke? I'm going to take your head. Grabbed him by the hair and Witcher style, and tied the head onto his belt.
That's pretty epic.
Yeah.
That's the perfect pacing for a fight, because it starts off pretty okay. We're doing fine. Everything's going grand. And then things take a dodgy turn. Yeah. And then there's that clutch moment where someone casts a spell or an ability is broken out or something like that. And you see the fight turn in your favor. Here's the thing. It can be tricky from a dungeon master's perspective.
Oh, I was worried the entire fight too. Because I knew how much damage all these characters could do. And they got quite lucky as well in that a lot of the Blood Witch's abilities are charms. They're her stronger ones. And I have a 50% elf party, so the nearest ones who got charmed were the fuckers who had advantage on it. But if I can give one more shout out, that was a particular clutch moment. My sorcerer cast slow on the boss and the Blood Witch. The boss succeeded, the Blood Witch did not. Because she cast slow on the Blood Witch, it took her 2 turns to activate Circle of Death. And on the second, and like she will, so basically she cast it, and when you're slowed, if you cast a spell, it's an action. You start at this turn, then it completes your next turn. Right before her next turn, when Circle of Death would have went off, it would have hit everyone in the room, because it was a small room, 86 necrotic damage. I think it was like a DC 17 save as well. It would have wiped, like, between that and the boss's damage, it would have wiped them. They turn around and just, my sorcerer, while having her slowed, twin spells a chromatic orb and literally explodes her with a crit lightning chromatic orb. She had 45 health coming into the round. 1 chromatic orb hit her. She fucking exploded. And because she died, she lost concentration on the spell.
Very nice. Very nice.
And they didn't realize how big that was until after fighting. I was like, by the way, you know that spell she was casting. And I showed them Circle of Death. But yeah, it was exactly how I wanted it to go, in terms of I got a lot around. We nearly got like a full minute in D&D combat out of it. Like we got nearly got like a full 10.
Nearly a full 10 rounds.
Nearly a full 10 rounds. We got to round 8 or 9. Everyone got a moment to shine. Everyone got a clutch moment. There were some serious moments of peril. Like I legitimately nearly downed 75% of my party. And it got really grim at some stages. And there's clutch heals, clutch spells, clutch saves, and then at the last possible moment, finally, the character who I had intended to be the one to take this boss out overcomes the fear that he was doing terribly on the entire fight, and gets the killing blow. It was just too perfect.
That's something I always like as well, is from a cinematic perspective, especially if it's someone that is the big bad on an arc that belongs to a particular character, a player character. It's very, very satisfying to have them make the final hit or get the final attack.
And I didn't fudge anything. It was legitimately everything.
Yeah.
I did not fudge a single dice roll or damage, anything. And I was looking at it, and I was planning to, if it was going to be he dies on the turn before, I'd be like, oh, he has 1 hit point, and then give it to you, man. But I didn't have to do any of that. Literally, the dice reinforced the story I was telling, and it was just so good. Honestly,
that's the danger of it, though, is that the dice can be your best friend, or they can be your biggest enemy. If you're a DM, because balancing. First of all, can I say, fucking 8 rounds is a lot. That's a long fight.
It was a 3-hour fight.
Oh man, yeah, 8 rounds is a very, very long fight. But I mean, that's kind of okay. Some fights go on for a long time and they're a bit of a slog, because it's a case of, well, it's just taking us forever because these guys have too many hit points and we're hacking through them, but we're never in any danger. But if it's a case of you need to start busting out the mass healing words, and a couple of people go down, you get them back up, and there's a lot of up and down and stuff like that. A long fight can feel like a proper battle, like a proper, real, drawn out, exhausting battle. And then when you actually finally finish it, if it goes your way, it can feel so bloody earned. So that is, I just having heard that, I was obviously not part of this game, but just having heard that, that was very satisfying.
It was, to that arc. And my Bloodhunter got a fancy new sword.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm slightly worried about the impact that's going to have, because he's probably
2d6 radiant.
Yeah, and he can also do a d6 cold or lightning with his rights. Yeah.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
What level are they?
11 now.
11 now. Yeah. Okay. Ooh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's another thing, is I don't know if we talked about that. I think we talked about it before. It's just about the idea of over buffing your party, or giving your party too many good things, because players are little magic item goblins and they always want more magic items. But yes, Martin, I'm talking about you. But at the same time,
I'm more of a magic item bugbear than a magic item goblin, I think, at this stage.
I'll give you that one, fine. But yeah, it's you got to be worried, or you got to be careful about not overpowering your party, because if they're too powerful and every fight becomes a cinch, then it's like, well, they're not having fun because this is the big bad. Oh, we killed him. He's dead. Wait, 1 round, he's gone.
Or you run the danger, or you run the danger of overcompensating, and you make it too hard to try and give that one player a challenge, and then the other players get wiped because they don't have either the gear, the skills, or the stats that this one player does.
Absolutely.
Davy Chappie did a really good video on it actually recently called "Power Doesn't Exist in D&D," and he's basically made the point that no matter how powerful you are, your GM balances the encounter to be as difficult as they want it to be, like between easy, medium, hard, and deadly.
That's true, yeah.
And he raised some interesting points, and I agreed with a lot of it. Some things I had slightly different takes on, but it was a good solid video, and I think that's something to keep in mind when you're making like a boss battle or a boss fight too. Is like, I made that fight intentionally to be deadly, and I was even worried about it. And like I messaged you a number of times over the course of the last few months while I was making the character, making the item, and also setting up the boss fight. Like, you're the one who taught me to include the 2 wolves, and they worked a treat. That worked perfect. Like, and I think it's something
to be damage sponges. Yeah.
I think it's just something. Like composition of the enemy force, the setup, what layer actions you're going to be, where they're going to be fighting, all things you kind of. If you want to have a really good tight boss fight, I think they're all things that are worth considering and worth putting some time into thinking about.
Little tip for a bit of a peek behind the curtain for you, Martin. Little tip for when you're planning boss encounters. Decide how many rounds you want it to last for. Work out the average damage for each of your party members, for each of your player characters on a given turn. Sum it together, multiply by the amount of rounds you want. There you go. And you should get it. Like, if you wanted to go 5 rounds, there's 5 rounds. So for example, I know Lug has a spear that does a D8 damage because you use it one-handed, but you have the spear mastery feat. Average of a D8 is a 5 plus your strength is 4. That's 9. You do 2 damage with 2 attacks with an action plus rage damage on top of that, which is plus 3.
2.
That's
for me. I'm not that high up in barbarian yet.
Sorry, so plus 2 for you. So that's going to be 5 plus 4 is 9 is plus 2 is 11. So that's 22 on average for just your action. And then if you bonus action by using like your
giant
check your spear or something like that, I account for that as well. And then I'd be like, right, so Martin can do approximately I'd say between 20 and 30 damage a round. And then I would go, cool. I want Martin to be able to last for. I want this round of the bad guy. If it's a single boss bad guy, I want it to last for at least 5 rounds. Cool. It's going to be like between 125 and 150 hit points. So I that's a good way to work it out. Just strictly maths related. And I try not to account for too many things, because if you start thinking, oh well, they also have this other ability and this other thing or this magic item, don't account for how many health or how many, like, I don't know, how many bonus things they have here and there or anything like that. Just account for their base stuff, and then, because you don't want to be nullifying a player's bonus that they get from this magic item or from this thing, whatever their base attack is, go with that. But if they have an ability, for example, that they can activate maybe only for a couple of attacks or something like that, don't, like Battlemaster stuff. I wouldn't factor in Battlemaster superiority dice at all, because that's something that the player can do. That's a cool thing that the player can do. I wouldn't want to nullify that by giving the monster extra health, so that basically becomes somewhat useless.
Yeah, totally. I know. I've never done that. That's a really interesting way to set up. I usually just go. Honestly, I'm super weird with how I set stuff up, in that a lot of the times I'll be like, okay, so perfect example for this one, I knew I wanted to do Ludwig, and I wanted him to be like a dark mirror to my blood hunter. So I wanted him to be like a corrupted evil blood hunter. So I was like, okay, cool. My blood hunter, like for example, like my blood hunter when he wolfs out, he's like grey and black. So this guy's going to be all white. He's going to be a white wolf with grey fur, and he's going to wear white armor and have a white cloak, and his sword trails moonlight behind it, and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just so when I do that, I go like, this is the kind of feel I want for this boss fight. So like this one, I had him, and I like, because I had so much involved around like blood and like magic with blood and stuff, I literally typed blood into the monster section on D&D Beyond, and just looked through until I found something I liked. And then I saw the Blood Witch, and it was like read her abilities, and she's like a bloodbender from Avatar. Like, she can control the blood in your veins and make you like walk towards her or attack people and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. oh great, so she can be his like companion. She can be like who's the one who's been providing all like the magical oomph to all this blood stuff, and he's just the lead. Like he is the lead, the military leader. She's the magical force. And I was like, that's a really good duo. And like that's literally kind of a lot of the time how I will plan my boss fights. I will filter that. I will filter stuff either by the theme I want to go, the area they're in, and then just have a look and see what's there. And I'll go by CR. I'll go by CR and the difficulty scale that D&D Beyond will give me. So if I like for the Ludwig one, that was a deadly boss fight. Most of my boss fights now, I'll pitch at them are deadly. A lot of the time, yeah, I feel it. A lot of the time, earlier on, I mostly pitched towards medium. When they were at lower levels, but I think I stayed on that for a little bit too long and made some boss fights too easy. Like I would actually say the one I ran last night was probably like the most satisfying combat for me as well, in that like I felt like I actually finally it went as I wanted for the first time in terms of like a really satisfying boss fight. Like the players have always enjoyed the boss fights, but you know, when you're a DM, you're like, oh, I forgot to do X, or I didn't get to use this cool feature or whatever.
You want. Yeah, you're just trying to maximize things for the players.
Yeah.
Something if I'd known about the or if I thought about it more, you kind of gave me some hints about your final boss there. Before, if I thought about it, I would have lent you Creature Codex and Tome of Beast, because they actually have some really cool blood related monsters in that.
Yeah.
There's even a blood elemental that's just like a water elemental but made of blood. It's really bizarre.
That's cool.
That's a really memorable encounter and boss fight though, Martin. Speaking of memorable encounters, segue. Is there any particular, and not necessarily bosses, but any particular monsters that stuck out for you that you have run or that you have played against that was a memorable antagonist for you or against you?
Okay, so I don't know. I'll leave antagonist for a second, but a point I want to say is you will always remember your first dragon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh man.
And me and you had the same first dragon, I think.
The
black dragon.
Black dragon. Yeah. Do you know what? Fire is scary. Acid's really scary.
Fire is scary. Acid is horrifying.
Oh man, there's some body horror stuff that goes along with acid that like.
No. God.
I do like the lore aspect of that was in that encounter, because black dragons always put their gold in the pools of acid to protect them and stuff.
I put a black dragon in my world.
Yeah, and I like how
have
I
fun,
like working
players.
That stuff in. Sorry?
I said have fun, players, because I know some of my players listen to this and I'm like, there you go, there's a black dragon somewhere, you won't know where.
They'll turn a corner one day and he's just standing there like, hey guys.
It's like the thing in the Family Guy where Brian's like, he's gonna get Stewie back for like setting him on fire and stuff. He's like, okay, you get to hit me. What, you get one hit? He's like, okay, cool, and he keeps like putting it off and teasing him, and then eventually they're in England and he pushes him in front of a bus. Like, yeah, that's what I'm setting up here with my players. I love you guys, really, I really do.
There's actually talking about the lore surrounding monsters. There's not a huge amount of it. I mean, there's always a little blurb about each monster in the monster manual and stuff like that. Some of them are will tell you about the origin of the monster and stuff like that. Few enough monsters have this. Werewolves have it, vampires have it. There's one monster in Modern Kindness Tome of Foes that I got a particularly great amount of mileage out of. He was only a challenge rating 1/2. There was only one of him. I don't really know. And it actually ended up being I went over a few sessions, and I personally thought that I got way more out of that than I should have. But that's a skulk.
Yeah, that thing wrecked me in my room in the tavern one day. Holy shit! Yeah, no, the skulk was awesome. It was like I said before, like I'm a huge horror fan. So when they're like, oh, this thing is appearing out of shadows and like it's appearing in like nightmares of children and showing up outside their room with this like faceless, like Slender Man looking motherfucker, I was like, yes, bring it on.
Yeah, they're not super powerful, but they are constantly invisible.
Yeah.
And I actually have them open here. So they have this thing called Fallible Invisibility. So the skulk is invisible. The invisibility can be circumvented by 3 things. The skulk appears as a drab, smooth-skinned human if its reflection can be seen in a mirror by another person. So, sorry, eating my own beard. Wow. So that's first of all, that's a really cool. That's kind of the opposite of a vampire. A vampire cannot be seen in mirrors. Skulls can only be seen in mirrors. I love that.
Very like Ring like that whole like looking in the mirror and seeing the ghost behind you, like.
Then the skulk appears as a dim, translucent form in the light, made of fat rendered from a corpse whose identity is unknown, which is very, very specific. But that's so Witcher-esque to me.
I was going to say metal, but okay.
Well, that too, yeah. But I mean, like, you know how if I know you've only kind of dabbled in the Witcher games, but if you play the Witcher games, you'll go up against a particular monster, and girls will be like, these particular monsters like the flesh of I don't know, female cattle specifically. Maybe I can make some sort of bait out of that. And it's a very weird little piece of trivia, but it really adds to the monster. And the final thing, and the one I think I worked in the most into it, is humanoid children aged 10 and under can see through this invisibility. So the way I did this monster is, you guys are in a town where normally it's protected by this standing stone, but the standing stone recharges on a full moon, and it had just gone through a lunar eclipse a few days prior. So you had a full month where there was no protection. Subsequently, the town is also on top of a tear in reality that leads to the Shadowfell. And skulks are kind of these guys that dwell on the border between the two. With that now standing stone inactive, the skulk was able to come through. And one thing I can't remember myself, I thought I read it in the book. There was an aspect of the skulk I came up with where I had in my head that because they're hunters, they're not even hunters really. The hunters, kill for food. They're just killers, but they typically, in my head, I had this idea that they only target those who are weak. They're not like, oh, I want to fight something big and worthwhile. No, they're like, what's weak? Who's the scrawny one in the pack, and I'll just murder that. So the very first person you guys found, the very first dead body you found, a victim of the skulk, was an old man named Dale. Dale was probably one of the oldest people in the village. The skulk targeted Dale specifically for that reason. You then spoke to a boy who was the mayor's son, and he was being teased by his sister because his sister was telling him not to make up stories, because she's like 12 or 13 and he's like 9. And she's like saying that you didn't see anything, stop being childish or whatever. And he's like, no, I saw a faceless man in the yard. He was in our back garden and I saw him. And you guys questioned him on that, and it was, I think the idea of the faceless man was particularly creepy. Then you got attacked. You mentioned that already. You got attacked in your room by the skulk. You, Lug, it's a particular description of your character that you only have one eye. He saw you as essentially like a cripple.
Oh, I literally never clocked that at all. That makes perfect sense. What the fuck? Oh my god.
That's why he went for you over Arkham or Wabu, because they seemed like they were fine, but you were missing an eye. And for him, that's like, oh, he like literally he will not see me coming. I know he's invisible anyway, but he's like, that is a disadvantage you have that makes you more I guess more
it's a
sporting.
Disability. Like, it's a disability.
It makes you more sporting to them. They don't care for an honorable hunt. They want the weakest thing possible that they can kill, and that's what he saw when he saw you. He saw that there was this missing eye, so that's why he attacked you in your room. And you briefly saw him reflected in your mirror. Turned around, there was nothing there, but that's because he's invisible. And then he stabbed you in the chest with his claws. And managed to escape. And this is the good thing about the Skull Smart we talked about already. When it comes to bad guys, if they're recurring bad guys, you build a rapport. So he had killed one person. I think he had tried to hunt Arkham at one point, but Arkham ran back into the tavern and stuff like that. A boy in town said that he saw a faceless man running around. He attacked you and escaped. And then at one point, when you finally faced it and ended up killing it, he was attacking that boy in his house. The reason he was attacking that boy, Peter, was because Peter was asthmatic.
Cool.
And I'd mentioned that a few times, that Peter was wheezy if he got upset, or his mother told him, don't get yourself excited because you'll have trouble breathing. And I hinted that he was asthmatic, and then the skulk specifically targeted him because he was asthmatic, and that's when you guys broke into the house, threw some flour into the air, and managed to kill him.
I give that little kid an axe to fight the ghosts he saw in his nightmares.
You're like at least, I don't know, 8, 9. He's like, I'm 9, and you're like, here, have a hand axe.
Because that's normal where I'm from.
But yeah, that was a monster. I was like, I thought it was a very cool monster. I love that there's lore baked into the mechanics of it. like I would love like it does. I don't think it is written there, but I'd have to double check. I'd love if in the stat block for vampires, it's vampires take X amount of poison damage when they're in close contact with garlic or something like that. That's the kind of stuff I love, though. I mean, that really makes the monster much richer. And the skulk, I got so much mileage out of it.
Question: is there run? Because I've not looked into. Because I've not used them yet. Because I when it was a gothic horror thing, it was going to be vampires or werewolves, and I had a werewolf in my party, so werewolves was to go. So like I haven't actually looked at the 5e vampires, like, because like unless I'm specifically looking for a monster to use, I tend to not look at a lot of stat blocks because I want to limit the potential of me spoiling a fight you have prepared. So like unless it's like specifically for something that I'm looking for, I don't spend the whole time like just reading through the monster manual. Sometimes I do, but I wouldn't like regularly go through, read all the shit. Like I'll just flick through when I would filter the monster types and go like, oh, what cool giants are there, what cool goblinoids are there, and like if that's the thing I'm bringing in. But yeah, I just want to kind of try and avoid as much metagame as I can, which is tricky because DMing and playing. But yeah. So, do vampires have anything? Because in the traditional folklore, vampires, they can't cross running water. Is there any reflection of that in 5e?
I'm almost certain there is. 1 second now, and I'll double check.
Because I know they do the sunlight, they do the mist, they do the bats. Yeah. Just running water. I think there is, but I'm not sure.
So, vampire. I want to say there's a little side note about them.
I think even if it isn't there, I would put that in, and I would put in the thing about vampires have to be invited into your house.
I actually think that might be in there as well.
Oh, class! I hope it is, because I love that. I love the thing is like, yeah, no, these things are horrible monsters, but as long as you're in your house, you're pretty okay. You just have to be smart enough not to let them in.
Yeah. So here we go. It's in the stat block. It's under vampire weaknesses. Vampire cannot enter a residence without an invitation from one of the occupants.
Love it.
Running water, they take 20 acid damage if they end their turn in running water. Yeah, it's really
love it.
A stake to the heart. If a piercing weapon made of wood is driven into the heart while the vampire is incapacitated, it's in its resting place. The vampire is paralyzed until the stake is removed. So you can basically hold them as long as you maintain that they're. Then they have sunlight hypersensitivity. They take damage from direct sunlight.
I love that they've included that much of the original vampire lore in there.
Yeah,
because the stake thing is some variants on the OG lore as well. Sometimes it doesn't kill them; it just like keeps them in their grave.
Exactly. Yeah. I do like that. I want to say there's some stuff elsewhere about their layers and about like. I think you can maybe only kill them if they're in their place of rest. So a coffin is almost like a respawn point for them. And if they turn into a mist, and if that mist manages to make it back to the coffin, it can regenerate to full body. And the only way I think you have to like be in their lair, or you have to destroy the mist or something like that in order to prevent that from happening.
If you use sunlight on the mist, you'll kill it.
Yeah. I love that though. And again, it really, really enriches a monster when there's lore, and I loved tying that in with the world. Again, the 9-year-old kid seeing the faceless man, the fact that you were like just taking off your gear and you put your spear in the corner and you turn to look in the mirror and there's someone standing over your shoulder, and when you turn around there's no one there, and all of a sudden there's 5 pierce holes in your chest and blood pouring out. I loved setting all that up, and the game, if there's one criticism to call out 5e on that, I would like a lot more of that, please. A lot more, like, and again, those are 2 things that are built into the stat block. They're not like the additional notes that are written before or after a monster, and sometimes that stuff is good, but I love when it's a hard rule into the design of the monster, and it makes monsters really interesting and really unique. That was one monster I had a really fun time running. I already told you what the other monster I wanted to talk about very briefly as well. So when we started this campaign, I knew I was going to do some undead stuff. I knew I had undead on my mind. I had just been watching playthroughs of the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I wanted to.
It's going to give it to you.
It's going to give it to you. I wanted to include essentially a Mr. X, a Mr. X, a Nemesis. So I found the flesh golem, and I'm like, he's only a challenge rating 5, so for a second level party, that's pretty tough, to the point like I wanted him to be beatable, but just very unlikely that you guys would beat him until later levels, because in the Resident Evil games, you can't beat him. You can shoot him and stun him temporarily, but you straight up cannot beat him or kill him. So I wanted there to be a monster you guys couldn't kill. Again, more so that was just hyper unlikely that you would do so. So the very first time you meet him, you guys are in a town that has just been overrun with zombies. All the occupants have been poisoned and turned into zombies. I did a system where I made you roll randomly to see where in town you'd end up, and a few of you started near, but in different sections, and you had to kind of come together. Wabu ended up in the church with a young acolyte of the church, and they had the doors barricaded with pews so the undead couldn't get in. And they decided at one point that they were going to ring the bell in the tower, to try and see if they can signal anyone to come, or to other people would know that they're there. They climb the tower, they ring the bell, and then when they're looking down the main street, they see all the zombies, and most of the zombies aren't really paying attention to the bell. And then they see this one 8.5-foot tall dude in a hood and long coat and like trench coat, and starts walking uptown, and the zombies are more or less ignoring him. And he doesn't give a shit about them. He is shoving zombies out of the way, like to just bother some flies to him. And when they're up in the tower, he arrives, and they lose sight of him as he goes down low to the church door, and they hear a bang and a crash of snapping wood, and he is punched through the door of the church. They, Mike as Wabu comes up with a great idea of dropping the bell on him. So he walks to the base of the bell tower and looks up at them. And they're like, oh shit, we better let him get up here, because he just punched through a door. They drop the bell on him, and it pins him to the ground. And they're like, oh, glad we got rid of that. And they decide to climb down on the outside, because it destroyed all the stairs on the inside of the tower. As they're climbing down, they notice the bell shifting, and he is pushing the bell off himself. And they're like, he just survived a bell, a church bell, a big one, being dropped on him, and he's fine. So you guys kind of made a run for it. You got out of that town. The last time you saw him at that point was when you were going into the mayor's house and through a secret passage to get out of the town. You didn't see him again for a couple of sessions until you went to this. You couldn't fight him then. And most of you did not have weapons at this point. Yeah. So you couldn't fight him. You picked up some like hammers and some improvised stuff, but nothing that was decent. So next time you saw him, you're at this logging camp in the middle of the woods. You and Arkham decided to sleep in the wood cabin that was there. Wabu was like, I'll keep watch for now. So he stayed outside next to the fire, and he rolled dirt low on perception. And I describe that at one point he's staring into the fire, and then he looks up, and standing about 20 feet from him is this 8-foot tall figure with 3 dead bodies on its shoulder, and he throws them on the ground and immediately beelines it for Wabu. So you guys try to fight it. There's a moment where you attack it with a couple weapons, and I'm like, I think it was at this point I realized, because I thought in my head I had read the stat block previously that they have resistance to non-magical. They actually have immunity to non-magical. And I'm like, oh, so you don't even do like a bit of damage, you do no damage. And at this point, the only person that can harm him is Arkham, because he has magic, but he's only chipping away at bits and pieces. He can't do enough by himself to defeat this thing. So you guys end up running into a dark forest and trying to get away from him. Again, he goes off into the woods doing his own thing. He picks up the bodies he had, and he proceeds deeper into the forest. And you guys are just happy to be alive, because he hits hard for the level. You're at like level 2 at this point. The next time you see him, you don't see him for a long time actually, but in the interim you actually get your spear silvered, and I think Wabu gets some of his weapons silvered as well.
You got the sharp-toothed sword silvered, I believe.
Yes, exactly. And the next time you see him, he ambushes you in the on a forest road. You're actually traveling with someone who up until this point you did not know was his master. And he had telepathically told him long distance, ambush us at this point. And you basically get off your horse and you think to yourself, right, I got this fucker now, silver spear, let's go. And you charge him and you stab him in the abdomen, and I just said it goes about a centimeter deep, and he looks at you completely unfazed. You do no damage, and you are like, what? But it's silvered. Like you said it to me like I forgot, and I was like I forgot it was silvered, and I'm like, yep, it's a silvered weapon, no damage. And you were like, what? Huh? And then Wabu realizes, oh shit, Wabu only has silvered weapons as well.
Yeah.
And again, Arkham's now again the only person. And then in this as well, the guy you're traveling with, who is also a caster, turns on you, and it's now suddenly it goes from 4-on-1 to 2 of those 4 not being able to do anything to 1 of those 4 then betraying the other 3. So it's 2-on-3, and 2 of those 3 are useless.
If it was just the golem and it was the 3 of us, like me and Wabu probably could have tanked hits long enough for Arkham to just like whittle him down. But
at this point, you were like level 5-ish. Yeah.
But with Strauss there as well, it was. I just remember being like, "Oh, we are so fucked. We need to leave."
Yeah. So you guys, and the reason being is that it actually it's immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine. And it's specifically adamantine when it comes to that, or magical weapons, which you did not have at this time. So, well, no, you had one, but it was a cursed sickle. And I think, actually, there was a fear in that fight that Arkham would get hit. If Arkham gets hit by it, he has to make a wisdom saving throw, or he can't do anything else but charge the thing that attacked him. And if he got up close to this thing, he would have been down in 2 hands.
And his wisdom is dog shit.
It's low, yeah. So that could have gone very, very badly. I like when stuff like that happens, where like I gave him a cursed weapon. Sure, that's one thing, and then I make you face this enemy, and I don't in my head put 2 and 2 together that but if Arkham gets hit, he's going to want to charge this thing and then get hit, and then he will go down straight away, and it becomes a whole thing. That was one of my prouder moments, because again, the first time you didn't have weapons, fair enough. The second time you had weapons, but even then could do no damage, and you thought, oh god, it needs to be silver and magical. And the third time, when you thought the silver would do it and didn't work, I'm sorry to say, Martin, I'm really sorry, I got an insane amount of satisfaction from that. The look on your face when you were like, but it's silvered, and I'm like, yep. Was one of the best moments I've ever had in D&D. And that's I think I really managed to get the Mr. X feel from that guy.
Totally.
But that's kind of one of those things as well, where you guys, and it kind of ties back into what we were talking about originally, there's this recurring character, having a boss show up repeatedly. He's not so much the boss, more a sidekick to the boss.
Yeah.
But having them show up repeatedly, and having you guys have all these times where you needed to get the hell out of there. When you guys finally fought him with magic weapons, you took him down fairly easily, and I would imagine, you feel free to correct me, that it was quite satisfying when you finally got there.
I felt really, really good until I cut the other guy's hand off and then he teleported out. Then I felt really, really angry.
Like I said earlier on, make sure your bad guy has a good escape plan.
Still salty about that one.
Good old Dimension Door.
Oh man!
Not only the brilliant thing about Dimension Door and that encounter, you killed the golem, but there was also an evil undead version of the player character Wabu there.
Yeah.
And there was that Strauss had basically turned to his side, and then Strauss, the bad guy, and in that moment, it worked out so perfectly that Strauss had been hit by you, and I looked at the initiative order, and I'm like, I know Wabu, or the evil Wabu's go is next. I have Strauss hold his action because I know he can take one person with him with Dimension Door, and I have him wait, and on the next turn I have Wabu, the evil Wabu, walk over, and the 2 of them manage to make it out. Because if I didn't have that, or if the initiative order had been any different, I may not have gotten the opportunity to teleport out the other Wabu, and he would have died there.
Yeah.
So it was quite satisfying for me, not so much for you guys.
Someday I'm gonna kill him real bad. Like, it's gonna be dark. Like, it's like Punisher season 2 dark. Like, it's not gonna be nice for him. Like, it's not gonna go well. I may upset you with my description.
That's the thing though. I look forward to it, because in that final fight, when you finally do face Strauss, and you manage to properly kill him, and you've defeated him after he betrayed you, and after he tried to attack a place that you care about, and killed people and then ran away. When you had him, and he ran away. When you finally kill him, I will get the same satisfaction out of it you did, because we've seeded the bad guy. We've seeded the big bad throughout the campaign, and therefore there is emotional buy-in, and there is a satisfaction to it.
The words tear the life from his body.
Full circle. We're back to where we started.
Yeah, full circle all the way around. Oh yeah. God.
But Martin.
Yes, Connor.
That's all the time we have today.
Shit. Yeah, that one was fun. That one was fun. That was a lot of fun.
That was a good one. Yeah. We were going to do this like earlier in the week for last week's episode.
Yeah.
But I think if I'd done it then, I was in such a bad headspace during the week because of all the stuff that had happened. I'm glad that we left this now because this was actually fun. I do like talking about. I love monsters. Oh man, that's the first. I think that's probably the first thing. More than magic items. If there's monsters in a new book that's out, that's the first thing I look at when I look at these new books. Any new book that's published, I'm like, give me them monsters.
Yeah, I always look at like D&D combat as like the highest level puzzle solving you can do in D&D, because it has the most stakes.
Yeah, true. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very interesting way of looking at it.
It's why I like combat so much.
And you'll get your chance to solve one of those puzzles this coming week, Martin, as we go into the belly of the beast. And you get to face, after months of being stuck on this arc because of like lockdown and stuff, you'll finally get to, hopefully this week, you guys will reach the climax of that. And we'll see how that goes. And I think we'll probably talk about it next episode. And just talk about how that goes. Hopefully with all player characters intact. Knock on wood. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, stories you'd like to share, or topics you would like us to cover, please tweet us at MicFlayersPod on Twitter. It's down on the lower screen.
Yes, indeed.
You can also find our podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me on the internet at Twitter, at So Sorry It's Over, which is for YouTube viewers, also in the bottom right hand corner of my frame here. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mert. And most importantly, you can find me here on the Micflayers podcast every Friday at 6 p.m.
Very good. You can find me on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important. And of course, every Friday here at 6 p.m. Irish time on the Micflayers podcast. I got it right this week.
Hey!
So thank you all so much for watching or listening, and we'll see you all again next week, guys. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.